Now, can I just ask you personally, are you at the moment leave or remain?
I think that we should remain in the EU.
You've just been caught out.
I've always said that. But our policy is to put it to the people and to get them to decide. So I suppose in the end it doesn't really matter what I think. What matters is what the public thinks, and we need to put a proper deal to them versus remain and find out what they say.
You are devoting 100 to 200 billion pounds of British taxpayer money in your stated manifesto policy to renew a system. I would like to know, is Labour going to use it?
Our position is that the decision has been made, and so we've moved on.
Right, so the standing position of the party right now is that you support the renewal of the Trident nuclear missile programme.
The standing position of the party at the moment is that the decision has been made and we're moving on.
Do you agree with it as the Shadow Foreign Secretary?
I believe in practical politics, and a decision has been made, so we're moving on.
Yeah, but do you support the use of the Trident missile system? You could be Foreign Secretary soon.
Do I support the use of the Trident missile system? We will have a Trident missile system. We will use everything which is available to us to protect our country.
OK, so the purpose of a nuclear deterrent is that you spend all this money on this sophisticated nuclear weaponry and it deters people because they believe you would actually use it. Jeremy Corbyn, your leader, is on the record as saying he would never fire a nuclear weapon. Can you explain to our viewers how that deterrent would work if the Prime Minister is Jeremy Corbyn and he has a stated position himself of never using a nuclear weapon?
Just to establish, so you're the Shadow Foreign Secretary and presumably would be involved in the negotiations over this great new deal. What motivation would you have as a Remainer to get a great deal to leave?
Well, because we're going to be putting it back to the people, so they may decide that they want to leave.
You've just been caught out.
I think that we should remain in the EU, and so we need to have the best deal possible for jobs and the economy, in case that's what the public decides that they want to do.
But if it's a fantastic deal, wouldn't it persuade people to vote for it? In which case, leave would win the referendum again.
Well, listen, it's our duty to make sure we get the best deal possible. I personally would see it as an insurance policy because I would hope that the public would decide to leave.
You've just been caught out.
I think that we should remain in the EU. In the end, it's going to be up to them whether we leave or whether we
hope
remain.
that people would decide to leave?
To remain.
You've just been caught out.
I think that we should remain in the EU. So
right,
I
so
would
you
hope
can
that they
see
would
why
decide.
people are confused here, because
Yeah,
you
no,
would go
sorry,
and
there's a
negotiate.
slip of the tongue on
Yeah,
my
but
part.
I mean, but it illustrates a point, doesn't it?
Why don't you just be more honest, really, which is...
I'm being completely honest
You're
with you.
not really. What you're
Yes,
really...
I am.
You want your cake and eat it, Labour. You've been sitting on this fence so far, you've all got splinters, right?
No.
Here's the bottom line.
You know what all this reminds me of? That film Misery. Remember? With the author? Where he had some weirdo kind of fucking bunny boiler.
The swearing, Paul.
That started off as a #1 fan, but ended up tying him to the bed and breaking his fucking legs to make sure he couldn't leave the house. Remember that?
I'm your #1 fan.
There is zero incentive of the EU. If you were to get into power and win this election, the EU knows that 99% of the shadow cabinet doesn't want to leave. What kind of deal do you think you're going to screw from the EU?
Put that bunny boiler as the EU and put the author who's had his legs broke tied to that pissing bed as the 17.4 million people who voted for democracy.
There! Look there! See what you made me do!
So what do you think's going to happen? Do you think all of a sudden they're going to put splints on our legs, untie the bed, open the door and go, see you later? No.
I love you, Paul.
It starts with the legs.
Do I speak now?
It will be your neck next.
When they think that the entire shadow cabinet, from the top down, basically doesn't want to leave.
You've just been caught out.
They don't want us to leave either. And yet you want to try and persuade the public that somehow this is going to be fair-minded, that somehow you're going to go in there and hardball negotiate a brilliant deal with the EU. It makes zero sense. Why would anybody around that table be looking to do a great deal for us to leave when 99% of you want to stay in? You keep saying we're going to give the public this great choice between a great deal and remain. In fact, what's going to happen in reality, because nobody around that negotiating table actually wants to leave, you're going to have a very watered-down deal, which no one's going to think bears any relation to Brexit, or staying in. And then I put it to you, the public are given a choice, really, between a version of Remain and full Remain.
Do I speak now?
Yes.
OK. So the situation is this. I think that we should remain in the EU. We want to be able to negotiate a deal which has been the sort of deal that we have been talking to the Europeans about for more than 3 years, right? So it is being in a customs union, being close to a single market, having close alignment of rules and regulations.
I don't want a close alignment with rules and regulations.
I've always said that.
That's the very thing that I voted for to get out of.
But our policy is to put it to the people and to get them to decide. So I suppose in the end, it doesn't really matter what I think. What matters is I think that we should remain in the EU.
I want a Hoover that is actually going to do the job. I want a light bulb that actually is going to illuminate the four corners of the room.
Do I speak now?
These are all regulations that the EU have been instrumental in and taking our sovereignty away.
What kind of way do you want to leave the European Union?
Emily
And we would have told her.
staying part of the customs union means that we wouldn't be able to do trade deals with the rest of the world. Staying in the single market means that we'd have to sign up to the 4 freedoms, including freedom of movement. We'd still be paying in, but we wouldn't get any voting rights. I mean, it is just Remain minus, isn't it?
You've just been caught out.
Jeremy Corbyn has a stated position that he would never use a nuclear weapon. Can you explain to me, if you become the government in a few weeks' time, how the nuclear deterrent would work if the man in charge of ordering that use has said he would never use it? Where's the deterrent?
You don't want to leave. You've already admitted that. You're a Remainer.
Susanna, I'm trying to tell you the sort of deal that we would negotiate and the reasons for it. The other good thing about being in a customs union is it doesn't half help with the whole issue of the Northern Irish border. You know, because if you're in a customs union, it makes it much easier for goods to travel backwards and forwards, and you don't have to kind of keep doing all these backward leaps the way in which the Tories have had to in order to try and find a way through.
Shut up, we're aware you've got a time-sensitive morning, so let's move to the issue, another big issue, and this is really pertinent to your position, I think, because you may be Foreign Secretary in a few weeks' time. Trident. There's been a lack of clarity. So I think it's very important, given you may be in government soon, that we get some clarity here.
OK.
I love you, Paul.
Labour's position is that you support the renewal of Trident, which could be between 100 and 200 billion over 30 years. Is that correct?
The use of a nuclear weapon is a decision on a level that no politician anywhere has to make. It is completely out on its own. And no one in the end knows how they would use it, whether they would use it, because it has such extraordinary force, and millions of people can be killed. If we are in circumstances where we are under threat, it's impossible, I think, for any human to say whether they would be prepared to kill millions in order to be able to protect.
He has said it, Ms. Orme, isn't he?
I think that
Jeremy Corbyn has answered that question. That's my point. He has stated his position as he would never use a nuclear weapon. So again, I put it to you: if he's Prime Minister and you are Foreign Secretary, and this could be very serious and very real in 4 to 5 weeks' time, would you use a nuclear weapon to defend this country if you had to? Whether they were prepared to use the nuclear weapon or not. So we've had Conservative leaders recently saying they would press the button. We've had Labour people recently saying they wouldn't press the button. I'm of the view that it's best for us not to say one way or the other whether we would use it or not, just as we have done for generations. Allow me to give you a hypothetical. Nobody wants to use a nuclear weapon. No. Right, nobody, right? No, However, let me paint a picture to you, right? A rogue state, or Russia, or some nefarious regime out there decides to attack us, right? Which people fear may happen if there's a Labour government. They fear that because of Jeremy Corbyn's stated position about this kind of thing, it makes us vulnerable and weak. It doesn't argue... So you're imagining a situation where, because Jeremy Corbyn has become Prime Minister, Russia decides to nuke us. No. Is that the situation?
Because that is precisely what the world's oligarchs, governments, the politicians, the whole lot of them have been doing against Donald Trump.
There! Look there! See what you made me do?
They've assumed a position of the man and ran with that fear.
Let me explain to you very clearly what I'm saying.
Promoting fear next to a man.
Being in a customs union means that we are not vulnerable to the likes of Donald Trump, who has been talking about trying to put the National Health Service on the table when it comes to negotiations with America on a trade deal. We've already heard, haven't we, about the way in which the government are preparing for us leaving the European Union by negotiating with US pharmaceutical companies to make the National Health Service spend even more on American pharmaceuticals. And, you know, if we open up a trade deal to America, we could end up with all this chlorinated chicken and beef with all these hormones.
So soon as Pierce promotes fear next to Jeremy Corbyn, you notice it, you pick it up.
Let me paint a picture to you, right? A rogue state or Russia or some nefarious regime out there decides to attack us, right? Which people fear may happen if there's a Labour government. They fear that because of Jeremy Corbyn's stated position about this kind of thing, it makes us vulnerable and weak. It doesn't argue...
So you're imagining a situation where, because Jeremy Corbyn has become Prime Minister, Russia decides to nuke us.
No.
Is that the situation?
The population of people that wanted Brexit, that wanted Donald Trump, that noticed the fear that was being pushed out through the media relentlessly from all angles in order to change people's opinions.
Do I speak now?
You've just noticed it in a split second and you're on the defensive. How do you think we feel?
What I'm saying to you, here's the hypothetical you wanted.
I love you, Paul.
And they launch a nuclear strike at somewhere in the north of England, Manchester, Newcastle, right? And we now know they are planning to send another one to London. What does Jeremy Corbyn do?
Who knows? I mean, and that's kind of the point.
I'd like to know. You are devoting 100 to 200 billion pounds of British taxpayer money in your stated manifesto policy to renew a system. I would like to know, is Labour going to use it?
This current government
You support it.
No. We have said that...
Yes, you do.
No, Piers.
You
listen
support
to what
it.
I'm saying.
There! Look there! See what you made me do?
If you believe in ambiguity, was he wrong to answer the question? He definitively said he wouldn't use it.
I am not prepared to go into whether we would use nuclear weapons or not, whether we would make a decision collectively to use nuclear weapons or not, in what circumstances. All I can say is that we have it and that we're not prepared to say one way or the other in what circumstances, if there were circumstances to arise, that we might use it.
I love you, Paul.